The UK education system is facing a crisis. Parents are increasingly choosing to remove their children from mainstream schools. Instead, they are turning to home education. This is a worrying trend. It highlights deep-seated problems within the system. Schools are struggling with funding cuts. At the same time, the number of children with special educational needs is rising. This puts immense pressure on schools, parents, and children. The situation is complex and multifaceted. There is no single cause. To understand this issue, we need to look at the factors driving parents to home education. We also need to examine the challenges faced by mainstream schools. Additionally, the impact on children's well-being cannot be ignored. This is not just a crisis of resources, but also a crisis of values. The UK education system needs to be inclusive and supportive of all children. This includes those with special educational needs and those from minority communities. The current situation suggests we are failing to meet the needs of many children. Home education numbers have been steadily increasing in the UK. In January 2023, there were approximately 86,200 children being home educated in England alone. By autumn 2023, this number had risen to around 92,000. This upward trend is a clear indication that a significant number of parents are dissatisfied with mainstream education. Why are more parents choosing this route? Research suggests a variety of reasons. Disappointment with the quality of mainstream education is a key factor, with 31% of parents citing this as their primary motivation. A further 30% had always planned to home educate. Bullying is another major concern, with 25% of parents stating this as a reason for choosing home education. Worryingly, 24% of parents made the decision due to concerns about their child's mental health. They reported their children feeling sick, exhausted, or depressed in the school environment. The increase in home education coincides with a severe funding crisis in UK schools. Schools receive funding based on student numbers. This creates a financial incentive for schools to boost enrollment. As a result, many schools are pressuring parents who have chosen home education to re-enroll their children. This pressure comes at a time when schools are already struggling to cope. Years of budget cuts have left them short of resources and staff. Class sizes have increased and support services have been reduced. This makes it even more difficult for schools to meet the needs of all learners, particularly those with special educational needs. The funding crisis is forcing schools to make difficult decisions. They are often left with little choice but to focus on meeting basic requirements. This leaves little room for providing individualized support or addressing complex needs. The pressure to re-enroll children from home education further exacerbates this challenge. One of the most pressing issues facing the UK education system is the rising demand for special educational needs and disabilities SEND support. The number of children requiring additional help is growing. This puts a strain on resources and highlights the lack of adequate provision within mainstream schools. Experts project that the number of children needing education, health and care plans, EHCPs, will double to 1 million within a decade. EHCPs are legally binding documents that outline the specific support a child needs. However, obtaining an EHCP is often a lengthy and stressful process for parents. The current system is riddled with long waiting lists and bureaucratic hurdles. This forces many parents to fight for the support their children need. Even when an EHCP is granted, schools often lack the funding and specialist staff to implement it effectively. This leaves many children with SEND without the support they are entitled to. Section 5. Anti-Semitism and the flight to safety. The rise of anti-Semitism in the UK has also contributed to the increase in home education and the shift away from mainstream schools. Jewish families are disproportionately affected by this trend. Many are choosing to remove their children from mainstream education due to concerns about their safety and well-being. Following the attacks of October 7, 2023, there was a marked increase in Jewish parents choosing to move their children to Jewish schools. Research suggests that 20% of Jewish parents were more likely to make this move after the attacks. This figure rises to 40% for parents whose children had personally experienced anti-Semitism. These statistics are deeply concerning. They highlight the very real fear and anxiety that many Jewish families feel. Anti-Semitic incidents in schools are sadly not uncommon. In fact, 23% of British Jewish parents report that their children have experienced anti-Semitism in a school context. The current situation is putting immense pressure on both schools and parents. Schools are struggling to cope with the influx of children with special educational needs and disabilities, and the pressure to re-enroll pupils who are home educated. They are caught between a rock and a hard place, facing financial constraints and a lack of resources. Parents, on the other hand, are frustrated by the lack of support for their children. Those who chose home education often did so because they felt let down by the mainstream system. They are now being forced to return to a system that is ill-equipped to meet their children's needs. The situation is creating a vicious cycle. Funding cuts lead to reduced support, which drives more parents to home educate. This puts further pressure on school budgets, leading to even fewer resources. Meanwhile, children are caught in the middle, their education and well-being suffering as a result. Perhaps the most concerning aspect of this crisis is the impact it is having on children. Children with special educational needs and disabilities are being denied the support they need to thrive. Those who are home educated may miss out on the social and emotional benefits of attending school. Forcing children back into mainstream schools that are ill-equipped to meet their needs can be detrimental to their mental health and well-being. It can lead to increased anxiety, stress, and behavioral problems. In some cases, it can even result in school refusal. This situation highlights the urgent need for a more compassionate and child-centered approach to education. Children deserve to feel safe, supported, and valued in their learning environments. The current system is failing to provide this for many. Addressing this crisis requires a multi-pronged approach. Firstly, the United Kingdom government must urgently address the funding crisis in education. Schools need adequate resources to provide quality education for all pupils, including those with special educational needs and disabilities. This means investing in specialist staff, training, and resources. Secondly, there needs to be a radical overhaul of the special educational needs and disabilities support system. The process for obtaining an education, health and care plan must be simplified and made more efficient. Schools need more support and guidance in implementing these plans effectively. Thirdly, we need to tackle the root causes of home education. This means addressing issues like bullying, mental health and dissatisfaction with mainstream provision. Schools should be places where all children feel safe, respected and supported. Ultimately, every child deserves access to a high-quality education that meets their individual needs. This requires creating safe, inclusive and supportive learning environments where all pupils can thrive. We must move away from a system that prioritizes academic attainment above all else. Instead, we need a more holistic approach that values the well-being and happiness of all children. This means fostering a culture of respect, tolerance and understanding in our schools. The current crisis in United Kingdom education is a wake-up call. It is time to invest in our children's future by providing them with the education they deserve. This means addressing the funding crisis, improving special educational needs and disabilities provision, and creating truly inclusive schools where all children can thrive.